You're watching LMCC.
I'm Ann, he's Chris, figure that out. We have on our 18th year now with Maritime Heritage Minnesota. The chair of our board is right there, Mike Kramer, he lives in Excelsior. And two of our volunteers, Kelly and Ann, Kelly dives for us and Ann bakes cookies for us.
Very good cookies.
Very good. I don't know how to do that. That's like a kitchen thing and I don't get it. But anyway, she does some above crew stuff too on the boats. I think that's all of our volunteers that are here. The recent stuff is for this presentations from 2000 on, basically. We've told you everything up until 2019, so this is just the stuff basically since the pandemic started. And okay, that's all of us. And even Mark moved to California, but if he comes back, he's diving with us, so he has no choice.
We always blame him when we take off on the boat without bringing up the dive ladder. So
Mark, and he hears us from California because it's his job. But our very small board right there, and we'll just keep going. Underwater archaeology around Excelsior. It's Lake Minnetonka, Christmas Lake, Lotus Lake, and Lake Minnewaska. Those are the 4 lakes we've worked in the last couple of years.
Yeah, this is basically our technique. We'll come to a lake, we'll go along the shoreline first, scanning along there, then we'll start what's called mowing the lawn. Basically making transects, either north, south, east, west, or actually depending on which direction the wind is blowing, because we like to try to go into the wind as much as possible and with the wind. Otherwise it affects our sonar image.
Okay, firstly, Christmas Lake. There's 13 wrecks in Christmas Lake. Now, that's a surprise to us too. We were doing the second pass, or we call them transects. We're just doing around the periphery. I went, got one, got one, got one, got one, literally within 2 minutes. We had 4. So that's pretty cool. One thing, the Glen Morris Inn became the Radisson Inn. That's the major business that was on the lake. They had a fleet of boats, and then people who also just lived on the lake, they had boats as well. And you'll find we found a fleet of small boats on the bottom. The first couple we found were basically small rowboats, round, smooth chimes, not flat bottomed or anything, but very buried. This one was lucky. I think this is this one that I think Kelly swam around and saw it from we were looking at another boat, I think. I'm not sure about that.
One thing about Christmas Lake we were very pleased to find was that the visibility when we were diving on it was around 20 feet, which is something you normally don't find.
Yeah, it's unheard of. It's a spring-fed lake, so.
And just by the way, Crystal Lake is not crystal at all. It's pure propaganda.
Yeah, don't go scuba diving in Dakota County and Crystal Lake. They're lying. Okay, this one's pretty cool. Sitting up in the water column a little bit. We've got several of those.
Yeah, this one I had to basically reach down with my arm about 3 feet just to barely touch the gunnel. I was able to determine that it was a square stern wreck, but that was about it. Couldn't really feel what probably was a considerable number of weights in the stern area that brought it down and let it sit in that position.
And considering she's been sitting like this for over 100 years, she's doing pretty good. Very healthy wood. Okay, this is a flat bottomed wreck that we found that we came across. Nice looking wreck. I mean, we can't say a whole lot about them. The pictures pretty much speak for themselves.
This one does have a little platform you can kind of see on the port side. That was actually a little, I guess, place for fishermen to clean and maybe gut their catch on the lake there.
Yeah, we found a picture of some folks doing that from Alexandria.
And you can also see the rocks that were used to scuttle it. One thing about Christmas Lake that was unique is that the large amount of wine glass stern wrecks that we found in there. Wine glass stern, if you look at the transom, you'll see that it's kind of in the profile of a wine glass, hence the name. So, yeah, you can kind of see that on this picture. Side of the hull curves in and then straightens out towards the keel.
So we found 6 of these wrecks with the wine glass stern on the bottom of Christmas Lake. And they're in various stages of preservation, various stages of being buried, mostly the designs are the same. A few bits and pieces are changed, so it's kind of neat. You can tell from doing research which are older, which are newer, just from what's on them and how they're built.
And details like this is what we really like to look for, because oftentimes, the written record of the past isn't as complete as you might think it is. And details like this, which may seem innocuous at the time and not worthy of preservation, tend to get lost. So these wrecks are oftentimes the only hard evidence we have of how these were constructed back in the day.
Yeah, my favorite thing to look at is fasteners. If it's nails, flathead or Phillips head screws, or slot head screws, because I have a book on this. Phillips head screws became most popular by 1936. Chris Craft started using them then in boats. But people who were Chris Craft would still build with boats at home a little further than that with just slot heads. But people that didn't even have screws used nails. But nails are usually older, obviously, very old sometimes. So if you find a Phillips head screw that's originally in the boat, you can pretty much guarantee it's post-1936. It's kind of the rule of thumb that we're going with. Yeah, another really buried one, this might be the one that I think Kelly found. Just from swimming around after they documented one, he went over to, oh, there's another one. Didn't show up on sonar until I really, really looked and found it. We re-sonared a couple times. But not much there, but is a wine glass stern for sure.
Yeah, at this stage of the exploration, we do what's basically called a pre-disturbance survey. We just take measurements of what's protruding above the surface. We don't dig in and possibly disturb anything at this point. So, yeah, that's basically what this is about.
This work is done on a Phase 1 archaeological license from the Office of the State Archaeologist. Chris and I are the only 2 underwater archaeologists in the state, and we're the only ones licensed to do work like this. So you can't do this sort of thing unless they say you can. Another wine glass stern wreck, of course, really sitting up off the bottom, which is really nice.
Yeah, even has a little bit of decking there, but pretty typical. We've had better ones like this.
Yeah, the problem with this one is the amount of vegetation. It's not so much the zebra mussels, but roots start growing inside the hulls, and if you remove that, it falls apart. It basically takes the place of caulking and sometimes nails that rust away. So you gotta be very careful. We couldn't decrust this without destroying it, so we don't.
Yes. But it is one of the more intact wine glass stern wrecks in Christmas Lake.
Well, and it's covered up with stuff because it's not buried.
Then we got this one that has a slightly different stern bench on it than the other ones, and it was very buried up to nearly the gunnels, but I was able to feel underneath the silt and determine that it was a wine glass stern.
Yeah, and a very, very sturdy stem post on this one. It's built pretty heavy.
And lap strike too.
Yeah, it's lap strike instead of smooth hull. I love this one. Look at that wine glass stern. Isn't it pretty? You can actually tell it's a wine glass stern compared to the other ones.
Yeah, it's almost as good a shape as the one about 2 slides ago, but yeah, the gunnel is a little more disturbed on this. Then this one actually had a bow casting on it that survived, and determined it was from the product of the Alexandria Boat Works.
So for something like this for an archaeologist, yay! I mean, there's our research right there. Get the size of it, get the bow casting design, and we can date the thing. And what model it is. This is, of course, a Lady of the Lake, because they all are. But the bow casting does help date it a lot of times. That's why when scuba divers go down with their crowbars to pry off this big chunk of metal for a souvenir or to sell it on eBay, one thing like that can destroy the context, the story, the history of this one wreck. That's why it's illegal to do it, breaking federal and state law by taking that off the wreck. So hopefully, and it's a deeper wreck. Hopefully, it's intact and won't be bothered by the scuba divers. Most scuba divers in Minnesota are great. They don't loot, but there's a small percentage that do, and they're breaking the law, and I hate them.
This is the only metal-hulled boat wreck we found in the lake. Probably from about the 1920s. It's one of the early generation of steel-hull boats. And this actually did have a license number, but it was painted on the side. We couldn't really make out too much of the lettering on it. So.
And even when we do find a registration number, a lot of times we can't, because we do have a contact at the DNR, a couple guys actually. I send them the numbers and they look them up on their microfiche. But when the Department of Conservation was changing over to the Department of Natural Resources in 1972, they decided to throw out all the registration cards because they didn't want to move them. I hate them too. So from 1959 to 1971, all the documentation for all the boats in Minnesota does not exist if that boat was off the water prior to 1972. If it stays on the water from 72 on, even if it was licensed in 1959, we can sometimes track it all the way back.
Yeah, this is what I was saying earlier about the past not being as well documented as you might think.
Yeah,
It may have been, but
easier to
then
find out, yeah.
records get tossed and destroyed somehow. So.
And companies go under, fiberglass boat companies. There were 9 million of them, it was really 9 million in the United States back at that post-war. And after 2 years, most of them were gone. So we find these very, very rare boats on the bottom of the lake from a company that was in business for 3 years. I mean, it's really hard to research something like that, but we do our best. What's great about this is I love little steel boats. They don't rust. They're just little guys sitting down there. They look like they should just be floating on the water. Steel is a great thing to build with when it comes to boats like this. Actually, they started in the 1890s. People don't know that metal boats have been around since the 1890s. That's really cool. So this platform just sprouted out of the bottom of the lake right next to this wreck. Wow.
Yeah. Research showed that there was a dive shop called Travis Dive that, I don't remember exactly where
they're in Hopkins. They were in Hopkins,
right. They actually had this area in the southwestern part of Christmas Lake that they used as a sort of for play, basically, kind of like what they do with Square Lake nowadays. There was a place where they dove down, had a platform. They had, we'll see in a later slide, stations that had depths marked on them, so you could compare your depth gauge on them and make sure your gauges were accurate. These guys were operating mainly in the 1950s and 60s, probably in the early 70s. But they also took it upon themselves to sink a couple of boats for something to look at while they dove.
And for they're teaching navigation underwater. What's pretty cool is our volunteer Kelly over there has invented an underwater navigation system, an underwater computer that he uses with a buoy that's on the surface of the water. Wherever he swims, it records his track. That track can then be uploaded to Google Earth or whatever, however else he wants to use it, which has been very helpful for us in doing our work because he can basically find anything again if we can't find something. But he can, wherever he swam, we can upload that and go, oh, there. And he invented it working with us over the years. It's been pretty cool.
Yeah, and those two bottom photos, you can see why we really liked Christmas Lake with the visibility.
I mean, look at that. You can see both things at the same time.
Normally, if I was at the bow, I wouldn't be able to see the stern of a wreck.
And you'll see in the pictures after this on the different lakes. This is great, so get used to it because it's not going to be in the next slides and stuff.
Non-Christmas Lake slides.
Yeah.
This was the other boat that Travis had scuttled, probably back in the 1960s. You can see two photos, historic photos of it, one before scuttling, one during scuttling. And then you can also see the little circular discs that they embedded in the lake bottom with the depth tack welded on them. So you can test the accuracy of your depth gauges.
Yeah, that guy that's standing with one of the discs, that's a Travis Divers guy, before they took him down. So.
Yeah, we don't know too much else about this cabin cruiser other than it's old.
And the cabin came off at some point. Okay, Lotus Lake, south of Christmas Lake. Crappy visibility, really bad, but you can find certain things out. Good for swimming, but don't, if you go scuba diving, forget it.
Yeah, it was nowhere near as bad as Crystal Lake, though.
Chris hates Crystal Lake in Dakota County, if you haven't figured that out. Well, we were so excited. Crystal Lake, great clear water, it's all I've been reading about, and it's just muck. It's awful.
The name was a lie.
It's awful. It's personal to him. They did it on purpose to him. Notice in these slides I've been putting OSA license numbers. That tells you the licenses that we got from the Office of the State Archaeologist, which is actually part of the administration of the governor. So it's a state level office that we answer to. That's who we answer to for everything that we do. And those are the 3 licenses that we took to do this work. It's on all of the slides, the first slide for each of these licenses, if you care. There's 2 wrecks on this slide, so.
Yeah, upper left is anomaly 1, lower right is anomaly 10. Anomaly 1 is, they're the ones that are near each other, right?
It's the dingle line
Yeah,
one. No,
yeah.
it's one that's like dingle.
Oh, the dingle
Yeah,
one,
it's one of the backs that-
That one's lap straked, very similar to a boat that we 3D scanned that was in the collection of Minnesota Historical Society. Probably from the 1910s, 1920s.
Yeah, at the latest, because
Yeah.
these are the Dingle Boat Company of St. Paul was famous for building this type, although the more boats of Wayzata, Ramaley, they all built this type. And being that this is Lotus Lake, probably came from Ramaley or more, depending on the year.
Yeah, and the anomaly 10 on the lower right, that was a steel
I had
hull
no
boat
idea.
that is pretty broken up. Most of it was under the mud. I had to kind of feel to even see if there was a pointed end on it.
Yeah, the sonar shows more than you can
Sonar
ever see.
makes it look like it's a rectangle, but this is actually a pointed end boat, steel hull.
The bow is buried.
And the gunnel at the stern area was mostly intact, but that was about it. An old steel hull, that's about the most we can say about that one.
And you'll notice these say anomaly numbers, because we're working on the reports for these right now. I haven't submitted the site forms to the state archaeologist yet to get a number, because that's how it's done. You make the argument to get a site number if it meets the requirements of a site, and I haven't done that yet. So they will get site numbers soon.
So the third wreck in Lotus Lake, basically,
weird.
yeah, it's a kind of steel hull that had been sheathed with wood, apparently. It's
On both sides.
on both sides.
I know how heavy this thing was.
Still had a pulley at the bow, probably for an anchor at one point. And this one had cinder blocks in it too, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone sunk it on purpose. There's a cinder block sitting in it. But what's weird is at the stern on the starboard quarter, it's got this weird metal configuration with some weird hooky things. I don't know if that's to hook your fish on, but it was, and the wood on either side of it. I haven't seen anything like that yet. Neither of us have. It's weird. So I don't know, it's a really neat wreck. I wish it was in better visibility. If you can't get a look at the whole thing, but Chris does our site plan, so he'll take all the information and do a sketch, and I'll describe it.
God
And we'll see what we can get out of it, but it's really interesting.
I'm going to Lake Minnewaska.
Okay, and Lake Minnewaska has an airport thing for float planes, if you didn't know. I didn't know. I'm surprised the heck out of me. So does Prior Lake. They come down and they have them here, of course, too, but those smaller lakes, I don't expect them. Only 2 wrecks in Lake Minnewaska so far. We do have over 30 anomalies. We've only looked at literally 3. So I expect we might have more wrecks, but you never know. It might just be these 2.
These were the ones that looked best on sonar.
I mean, they look like a wreck.
This one was a flat-bottomed sailboat with a centerboard. You can see the centerboard on the lower left and lower center. And it still had its mast that was, you can see in the center there, it had to grope through the mud to actually see what was there. It turned out to be about 9 feet tall. And see the bow on the upper center there. Stern, right center. Not a whole lot else we can talk about on this one.
Just a small sailboat, very small sailboat that I've seen everywhere.
Well, we rarely find, in all our lakes, we rarely find sailboats, so this is unique.
And canoes, we find many of. This is a square stern canoe. This does have a registration number. You can see it there. One thing, I asked my DNR buddies about this wreck, and they said it's a 14-foot crestliner. It's not, obviously. So what happens is someone buys a 14-foot crestliner. Then when they buy this square stern canoe, they decide to take the number from the crestliner and put it on the canoe instead, but they don't tell anybody. So the state gets crestliner, no one checks these things. They get their registrations every couple of years, and they just keep saying, oh, crestliner, yeah, that's it, it's crestliner. And crestliner did make canoes, yes, but they didn't make this one. And so we've run into this, I don't know, 10, 15 times with wrecks.
I was thinking more like 7 or 8.
Yeah, no, it's a different wrecks, different, like Red Lakes though. It depends. So, like this one has 2 numbers, has AA underneath and AJ on top. So is AA original to the Crestliner or original to this? I don't know. So it's a mess and it's hard to, just this simple thing is hard to figure out.
And the fact that it has a registration number on that usually tells us that it wasn't intended as a canoe, because canoes weren't intended to be, at first anyway, back in 1959, they didn't have to have a registration number on them. So this was probably intended to use a motor from the get-go.
A 14-foot Crestliner. And the thing is, AA and AJ are numbers from 1959, because I know how they went. So we've done enough research on this that we know, and this is not a canoe from 1959. So people, don't switch numbers on your boats.
Confuses the hell out of us.
Yeah. You think they'd be thinking of us, but they don't.
Jeez. Oh, no.
Okay, Lake Minnetonka, yay! It's right over there.
It's over yonder.
It's a really big body of water. Right now, we have 96 wrecks on the bottom of Lake Minnetonka that are known. We found 2 this year. We had to cut our work short this year. Chris had a medical issue. He was in the ICU for 4 days, and some things happened, but he's okay. But we had to cut the season short because he didn't want to dive after that. So.
Well, I couldn't really.
He couldn't really dive after that. He was hooked up to a mechanical device, anyway. But
And it gets cold.
it gets cold. So one of those wrecks we did find. The other wreck, Kelly, our volunteer, found because he was trying to grow gills and spend enough time underwater.
And I swear he's cold-blooded
Gills
too.
start to sprout. I've never seen anyone go underwater more than Kelly. He loves diving that much. And I'm like, okay, great. I'll stay up top and yell at people for getting too close to us.
So his objective this year is to dive in November or December.
December, we'll see if he makes it December. We'll get an email, hey, guess what I found? You know, he'll find something new. So, anyway, so the wrecks that we're gonna look at here we worked on in 2020, 2021, and just briefly in 2022, since we virtually had 1 day on the water. Because we were at the hospital that night, actually, after we did some work.
It was the following
Following week,
week.
we were doing some sonar survey.
5 days
and we
later.
went to the hospital. Anyway, this is the unfinished dugout canoe, unfinished Dakota dugout canoe. We radiocarbon dated her. Oh, and Kelly found this, by the way, too. Kelly does his thing, and he came upon, what's this, he says in an email. I look at the picture, and I just about fall off my chair, and I scream into the next room, because that's where Chris is. Kelly found a dugout! And Chris was like, yeah, he did. He doesn't get excited over much. And so I emailed Kelly back, and the reason he found it is Prop Wash dug this thing up. This was buried under 4 to 5 feet of rocks and matrix and stuff. And it got poofed out by props, we think. Only half of it was uncovered. We got a phase 2 license, meaning phase 1 is survey and pre-disturbance. Phase 2 is meaning move a lot of matrix, which is the sand and the rocks over it. In terrestrial archaeology, the matrix is the mud, the muck, the dirt, whatever you're moving on a land site. And we uncovered her, documented her, and that image over there that's in color is our first attempt at photogrammetry underwater. I think we did pretty good. Well, Chris did it, I did it. Pretty good. So it's a 3D model that if you go to our website, it is on our website. You can click on it and turn it around and move it around. It's obviously not going to show the bottom because the bottom's still in the bottom of the lake, but you can turn it and look at it, do various things as a 3D model. Because we do 3D scanning of boats that are in museums. We've done several here in Excelsior, including the Onaway, your guys' boat. We've done that, that's all on our website. But we've never done a photogrammetry underwater because obviously 3D scanning doesn't work in water. You can't do that. But photogrammetry with a computer program does. And we'd like to thank Dr. Natalie Rosen, former Lake Minnetonka resident. She moved away a year ago. She gave a donation to us to buy the proper gaming computer. That's where the computers are to do these things. And the software to do it. She bought the whole package for us so we could do this kind of work. So, yay, Natalie. But that's by the way, the dating of the dugout canoe, it's all in our reports, but she says could be as old as 1683. and as quote-unquote new as 1908, because of where she was in context with what she was found with. The likely dates for her are 1683 to 1850. So that's what we're thinking right now.
And we had another wine glass stern rack in Minnetonka.
Another steel boat.
Yeah, and it was actually in very good shape. First, I thought it was actually wood that they did a very good job in smoothing the surface on, but later realized that it was steel. So.
Yeah, it's a nice. We love the wine glass stern steel boats. They're pretty cool.
This one we might try to do photogrammetry again in the future, but we got to wait till we get it on a day that's got really good visibility.
Yeah, and it's like the first week of May, just after ice out. Get in the water, freeze your butt off, and do some photogrammetry.
Then we asked Kelly if he'd been over
Yeah,
on
Kelly, you want to take some pictures underwater? He's the guy. Well, you were up in March this year, I think. Weren't you out in March? First week in April, this guy's in the water. Crazy. God, it's too cold. Okay, this is really cool. I love composite wrecks because you find these wrecks, okay, were they built in steel and then sheathed, or wood built in wood and then sheathed in steel, or were they done at the same time?
Similar to the Lotus Lake wreck. We found this one, dove on it about a month or 2 months apart, twice. And first time, it was pretty well covered in algae and some zebra mussels, and you can see that the starboard quarter, the side of the hull it was actually much closer to the transom at first. And when we dove on it again, when I actually drew the thing, it separated further out the side of the hull, and all the algae and a good portion of the zebra mussels were gone. And the nearest thing we can think what caused that was wakeboarders.
Propellers.
Because that was only in like 20 feet of water. Whenever we were in that part of the lake, there were always wakeboarders zooming
They
around.
come way too close to us. There's 150 feet with a dive flag or a dive buoy. Every buoy in the water you have to stay 150 feet away from. We get them coming like 60 feet from us. And then the wake that they give, I mean, it's really bad. I really, 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 really hate them. Because it's dangerous, not so much that they're ruining our work, but they can chop somebody's head off, number one, with a propeller. I mean, I've had grandpas go by me with giving me the finger while they go 30 feet away from me, towing their grandson as a water skier. Well, I've got two divers in the water, and I get the finger from these guys, because I'm asking them to stay far away, and they won't. I got that happened on Smithtown Bay. I got the finger. So people don't like us sometimes if we're that little bit of wet water. Well, for the time that we're on the lake, that belongs to us. We own it. And just for the little bit of time we're there, half hour, just give us some space. But some people, you can't tell them what to do.
Yes, for God's sakes, respect the dive flag.
Respect the dive flag. Yeah. So this it's kind of a bummer though. Yeah. The starboard stern quarter shot right off of the thing. It's a really cool little boat. It's older. We thought there's one of our friends here, Skip LaJoy. He's Tonka Bay Boat Works, or Tonka Bay Marina. He's got a boat of his that someone sank in the lake, and we keep coming up with boats where he thinks his was sunk. This has got to be yours. Nope, that's not it. Nope, that's not it. Every time we come to him with more pictures and video, nope, that's not it. So and he named it Titanic. So we're looking for the Titanic.
Yeah.
Haven't found her yet though.
Oh, this was kind of interesting. We weren't really expecting to find this.
This is a total surprise.
We figured this was built around 1905.
I mean, look at that sonar image. It doesn't really look like a boat. And we're resonaring the lake. We sonared it 2011, 2012 with older equipment. Our newer gear, we're redoing the whole entire lake with very short, really skinny transects. I mean, we've gone over this lake so many times, because anytime you go one direction or the other, the sonar can overlook things and put a shadow onto something, like from a big rock or a hillside. So we go 2 different directions, we go 4 different directions.
We try to go about 90 degrees off from our previous transects.
And when we did, this popped up. I saw something in the water column. I don't have that sonar there. But I'm looking at it, and I go, holy crap, that's a wreck. It took me, it was 50 feet deep, so when you go over the top of it, you can't see it in the sonar because it's in the bottom image, and sometimes the bottom image doesn't record. So when we went to the side of it, we did catch it, and This is fantastic. It's spectacular.
Yeah, the sonar image to me, I thought it was a dock that had gotten blown out there, but
He was wrong.
I tend to be pessimistic.
He's Swedish.
Optimists are never pleasantly
More
surprised.
Swedish than me. I'm only a quarter, he's half.
But anyway, yeah, this is had a 4-cylinder straight line motor on it. Had the mountings for a hand crank back in the day. When they first started using Model A or Model T engines, they actually had a little crank, similar to what you'd find in the front of a Model T, but it was actually geared so that the person sitting at the helm could crank the motor over. That told us that. But this one actually had a starter motor, and we could tell it was burning when it sank, because on the stem post you can see on the right there, a little less obvious here, but there is charring at the edge that too. The edge of the planks were charred on that, so we think it might have been one of those race boats that caught fire.
Caught fire and burned to the water line in 1915-ish?
Or the 1920s.
1920, something like that. We're not quite sure. Because we did find a couple of references in newspapers of a guy that owned, he's like the Globe Ironworks guy, owned a couple of fast speedboats. 2 of them sank within 2 weeks of each other by blowing up. This might be one of them. We're not sure yet, but it's in our report. Another little boat, just your typical little boat with bunches of zebra mussels on it.
One of the more many generic wooden boats we find, but still.
It's a nice little guy.
We like to document them because you never know that you might find something unique about them.
Especially if they've got slot-headed wood screws, nails, or Phillips head screws. There's a test after this presentation. Our nemesis, this boat's hard to find. This wreck is hard to find on sonar. It's weird. It's in a weird place.
Yeah, it's shallow.
It's shallow, but
And
weird.
it's covered in weeds most of the year.
And you'll notice that there's fish taking up residence on either side of the boat, on the wreck. I mean, there's literally mommy fish taking care of their eggs. It's kind of fun.
And that's when we were able, it's always kind of a holy grail moment for us when we're able to find the background to some of these wrecks and, you know, the events leading up to their sinking. And this one, it was reported in 1952 that a boat suddenly sank. And
It literally fell apart beneath the feet of these guys. It must have just been crappy. I mean, crappy boat. And boom, it sank. One man drowned. They did find his body, of course. And the other was rescued. And it's right exactly where this wreck is. I mean, perfect. And everything matches up. It's not registered. It doesn't have a registration number. Although the sides have fallen off the wreck. I mean, you see it. We call it the skeleton. Because it's like, boop, but the sides are there. They're just not on the wreck. They're on the ground. And the windshield's on the side too.
yeah, we found a bit of the windshield. The sides may be buried. I haven't found any sign of them there.
So it's a great little wreck. I mean, with the engine in place is kind of neat. Doghouse is gone though. Okay, this is our first Sea Scout.
One of the rare sailing boats we were able to find.
And it's a Sea Scout. I mean, any of you guys who do sail know what a Sea Scout is. It's a smaller than an A Scout. A lot smaller than an A Scout. And Johnson built a lot of Sea Scouts, and this might be a Johnson just from looking at different attributes. We couldn't find, Johnson does have etching on the inside. We couldn't see if it had the Johnson mark on it or not. The visibility just isn't that good. I don't think this happened in an accident. The stern is all ripped up, but I think they just sunk it because the stern got ripped up.
Yeah, you can see on the site map on the left there, the stern, the decking is all torn up. And when they sank it, they left the center boards down, so it's actually sitting a little bit off the bottom, not too much, but enough to be noticeable.
And where's the mast? I don't know. I think they took it off before they sunk it. Larson watercraft.
Yeah, this one is in really rough shape and in poor visibility. Dove on it, and a lot of the map was a result of actually groping. It's just, I can get like the basic width and length, but then it's just trying to grope around the edges of it and get a feel for how broken up it is. And it's not too bad from stern up to about midships, but forward of that, then the hull is basically broken up.
Well, and this is one of those holy grails because Larson Watercraft was a subsidiary of Larson Boatworks. Not a whole lot of people know it existed. It was their small aluminum boat division instead of wooden boat, and there's very few of these around. And you can see by the stern casting, it says Larson Seaman, and our stern casting has a big hole in it, but you can see it's the same thing. So this is the Seaman model, doing research, all that sort of thing, found out what year she's probably built, all that. Didn't have a registration number, so she's pre-1959, we do know that. But Larson watercraft are really hard to find because people have been recycling old aluminum boats. They don't want them, they recycle them. So it's neat to have one on the bottom. We just wish it was in better shape. This thing's really beat up.
This is another Holy Grail moment. I think we talked about this at some point in the
I'm
past
sure we
year.
have, yeah.
But to recap, this was
1970 was the accident.
1970. There was a group of people who took a boat out of Tonka Bay in the middle of the night and went full speed out in the lake and rammed this cabin cruiser. And 3 of the 4 people on that utility, or speedboat anyway, died. And the 2 people that were on the Owens were rescued, and along with the 3rd or 4th person from the other boat. When we found this boat, I was a little puzzled because you can see that the bow is entirely missing on it, and I was wondering what the heck happened to it. Then we came across the newspaper article talking about it, and you can see in the center there that they took a picture of the wreckage that was recovered, and there's the bow.
There's the bow, right there floating. We discovered this wreck a while ago, several years actually, but because we found her before 2020, we couldn't get an archaeological site number till after 2020 because 50 years is kind of the minimum limit for getting a site number. We waited till 2022 just to give us 2 more years, so it's just one of those archaeology things. But the wreck it's in great shape except for that bit that's gone. Otherwise, it's in great shape.
And it's an Owens, a
Owens.
type that was first built in 1958, I believe.
Yeah, this one is a 58. Yeah.
Well, we've actually found a couple of, or more.
Sitting up in the water column, look at the sonar.
They're actually standing on end. One in Prior Lake, that was pretty neat too.
We've got a bunch of these. If you looked at our last talk when we were here, we have a Chris Craft Stinger from 1986 and 72 feet of water standing straight up. 6 feet of her is embedded in the water in the bottom of the lake. This wreck is just north of that one, so they're both out here. We've got others that are standing straight up too in different lakes and this one, and cars too that are.
And we were able to instantly identify this one because we did a 3D scan, coincidentally, of a Larson All-American in the holdings of MNHS.
And that's a X-ray version of our 3D scan, and I tipped it up so that's the same exact position as the one on the bottom of the lake. So it's standing straight up like that. In these other sonar images, you can see the windscreen sticking up on the down images there. So she's just embedded with her outboard motor, is embedded a little bit in the bottom of the lake, and then she's just sitting there by the weight of that, and any flotation that's in her bow. But you can see here Larson. That is a Larson logo. That's what it should look like if it was brand new. And the Evinrude's the insignia for Evinrude's right there. And we do have a number for this one, so we did get the information about what year she sank and all that sort of thing. And it was in the 1980s.
This one kind of popped up in the last 5-6 years.
The last time we sonared this area with our gear was 2019, and this boat was not there. This wreck wasn't there. We sonared it in 2021. Oh look, there's a boat there that wasn't there before. Wreck, I keep saying boat. There's a wreck there, and it wasn't there before. I checked all of our sonar.
And yeah, it was interesting because you can see in the upper left corner there a skid mark on the...
It's the coolest thing on the planet. There's a skid mark.
In the upper center one, center pictures, you can see some of the skid marks that we took,
You can see it's still underwater. How often does that happen? It doesn't. This is so cool. So see, when you saw the sonar like this, you follow, what the heck is that? This big line. You go, okay, that thing skid across the bottom of the lake. How did that happen? It just did when it was going down. It just got dragged by an anchor. That could very well be an anchor could have hooked onto it and dragged the thing for a while.
We did find one wreck a few years ago that definitely got snagged by an anchor that somebody tried their hardest to lift it up, but finally gave up and cut the rope.
And they tipped the wreck to the side too. They moved the wreck when they did it. But this one is a home built. It got the records on it from the DNR. It could be a Taft, it could be a Luber. There's various companies that had kits, but it is definitely wood with fiberglass covering it. It's not a fiberglass boat. It really does look like a fiberglass boat, but it's not. It is wood at its core. So it's really a neat little thing. And Crestliner, that's a Crestliner. That's not a square stern canoe. That's a Crestliner boat.
In case you missed it.
In case you missed it. Bad visibility, so we don't even have a picture of the bow. I mean, it was really bad, dark and sketchy.
I have to do a technique called using a Brody bag, which is named after Steve Brody, who in grad school invented this technique for reading things in zero visibility, where you take a Ziploc bag and fill it with clear water, and when you want to read something like registration numbers on the side of a boat, you put that clear bag up against the numbers, then you put your face mask up against that bag, shine your dive light in it, and you can read whatever's in there. And that's what I had to do to read the number off of this boat.
You can't get a good picture of video though, or photographs, but you can at least get the information with the Brody bag. So we like the Brody bags.
Yeah, so this one obviously sank unexpectedly, because normally, you don't sink a boat with its motor still attached, so.
Yeah, and it sank in the 70s, 80s. It's in our report.
Another sailboat that we came across.
It looks like a surfboard. This is a very small,
Shallow drafted, thin rudder protruding off the stern. Mast was totally taken out of it, so it was probably deliberately scuttled after they took anything of value off of it. And kind of a scow,
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
Not like the sea scow, but it's similar.
And that's a fiberglass sailboat wreck 2, because we already have another one, the fiberglass sailboat wreck 1.
Yeah, that's the one off of
Up
the
the island.
yacht club, kind of.
Big Island yacht. Yeah, the first one. Yeah. Now this is the 2022 find. That's a Trojan from 1977 with a 2021 sticker on her. So that's a little interesting. That warranted an email to the sheriff, because that's the kind of thing. He hasn't gotten back to me yet. I literally only emailed him today because I was putting it off because I don't want them to go raise it. So, and they wouldn't. It's expensive. But what's this registration from 2021 doing on the bottom of the lake? I never heard of it sinking. Neither did the sheriff.
It's a bit of a mystery. The only thing missing off of it is the cover to the engine, and we don't see any other damage on it. So
Its key is in the ignition. The fish finder's in place. The name is covered by silt. ES, we think. Well, we were going to go back and dive and uncover the name, because we can do that much on a Phase 1 license, which is what we have. But Chris was in the hospital.
I had my incident then.
Couldn't do that. But we'll go back next year, hopefully. We'll have to wait till we see what the sheriff says. If they want the coordinates, we give them the coordinates for something like this, because it's not archaeological, but it's number 95. We want to hit 100, and this is number 95. So, I want them to leave it be. She's not hurting anybody. She's doing fine. She's just in there. Although they probably should open the cabin door and look inside the cabin. Kelly didn't. He thought about it, but he didn't. Kind of turned the knob and went, I don't think I'm going in there. If the wife is in there, I hope not. I don't. Or hopefully the family dog didn't get stuck on board. I don't even want to think about it. But for some, this should not be on the bottom of the lake in 2021 registration. So we'll figure it out once the sheriff gets back to us. It'll be in our report. You can read the report. So that's number 95 and number 96. This is one Kelly found again. Yay, Kelly.
This is
Look
another
at that
Kelly
great
find.
sonar image. Can you tell there's a wreck there? That's why we didn't find it using sonar, because you can't see it.
But Kelly, in his usual insane late in the year dives,
We get an email, well, I found another wreck, and thank you, Kelly, we love you. It might be, we're going to say it might be the Steamboat Rush, because of where it's located. There's some, maybe not, we don't know, but it's old enough to be the Rush. So
it's definitely old.
1890s. We haven't looked at her yet because Kelly's dove on her, but we're going to target for next year. She's number 96, and we've got some really good anomalies yet to look at that hopefully will get us to 100. Then I don't know what we're going to do. We're going to get to 101 and keep going, but it's a thing.
It's just a number.
It's a number. But you see the bow is very obvious. You know, the bow is still relatively intact.
Upper center there.
And a kind of a really big sort of wine glass sterny thing. There's only one picture of the rush. It's in Scott's book. I've digitized that picture. It says this boat, I don't know, we don't know until we get more information and dive on her, uncover her a little bit.
Yep.
We might have to get a phase 2 license for that. I'll talk to the OSA.
There's very little information about the characteristics of the rush that are reliable.
Just one bad picture, so. Hopefully we'll do work and figure that out. Okay, that's number 96. And then, oh,
We're done.
that's a dive flag.
Yes.
That's a dive buoy. That's a dive buoy. When you see that, don't come anywhere near us. It's 150 feet. I do have a distance meter. I will shoot at you with a laser.
Yes, for God's sakes, respect the dive flag.
Yeah, and if someone is being a jerk, I do record them, and I'll give their number to the sheriff. I haven't done it yet. I threaten it a lot, but I don't want to get anyone in trouble. Just give us our space. It's dangerous to come near us with a moving propeller. There's people underwater. Their heads can get chopped off. Even if you're in a kayak, you can hit somebody in the head. If you want to come close, ask for permission.
We do try to go up our descent line, but sometimes there are situations where we just have to do an ascent off the dive buoy line.
Come up not near the dive flag.
So we'll be not near the dive flag, and
Don't assume you know where they are, people. Because I get people ask me, where are they? It doesn't matter where they are. You're in the wrong place. You're too close to us. Go away. I yell at people. I don't want to. Oh, and there's a picture. That's my bite. Why is that doing that? I got bit by a walleye, or northern.
Northern.
By a northern fin. Sorry, I forgot that was there. There's really no reason for it, except that I got bit by a northern. That's our website. All of our, as we're rebuilding the website, we had to change servers in May, right before we started our busy time. We were diving in not so Crystal Lake. If you haven't heard, Crystal Lake has really bad visibility. Anyway, before we were doing that diving, I've been rebuilding our website slowly. A lot of it's in place, some of it isn't. The video from Lake Minnetonka is not linked yet, but the video from Lake Minnetonka is at our YouTube channel, so you can just go directly there. And Kelly's got a ton of underwater video to look at as well. But otherwise, our website's pretty much back up with all of the links to all of our reports and various things. And I'm slowly building our 3D model. We've got also 3D models that are loaded onto our website. So I got to do all that stuff in my spare time. And so we'll get that done. Other than that, questions? Someone had a question before. Ask it now. Who was that person?
Where on Christmas Lake did you find most of the wrecks?
It's all over Christmas Lake.
Beyond the old Radisson Inn or down by the pump house?
Well, the dive shop area was kind of in the southwest corner.
That's with I used to ski there back in the 50s, and we saw dive flags down there a lot.
Yeah, those people didn't know about these smaller wrecks. We're the only ones who know about them because we found them. I went looking for them.
They're kind of scattered around.
Yeah, up by Radisson Inn. There's only 3 small wrecks up, sort of, kind of, where Radisson Inn was, but they're spread all over the lake. Nothing in the deeper parts yet, because that does go down to about 80 feet. Nothing there yet, but we have some anomalies that deep. We just haven't dove on them yet.
I'm interested in the location of the different sites and the anomalies and the depths. Do you have that information on your website?
We don't tell anyone where the stuff is specifically because there's protected underwater sites, and our agreement with the state, we can't do that. We can't give out coordinates.
Yeah, basically, if we start giving that out and parts start disappearing off that, we lose our license.
Divers take crowbars to the bottom, and
We lose our license because
Yep.
we're aiding and abetting looting.
yeah. So we don't. We'll say generally north of Big Island. The depths we sometimes give. We don't. The state knows how deep they are, but we don't usually put them in our reports either. For that reason, because there is a fisherman that's going around with a drop camera, and he snagged one of the wrecks in Crystal Bay, it's an archaeological site, and he's dragging a camera over it and damaging it, and then he put that on YouTube.
Yeah, he was looking at wrecks and he was, basically
Damaging it.
with the camera facing backwards to the line of travel, so he wouldn't know he was hitting something until he hit it. So, yeah.
And so some people are taking our work to go look for stuff if we say something too specific. And we're sorry that, if you look at our reports, look at the video, you can learn enough about them. If you're not one of our volunteers, we don't give up. If someone else finds the wreck, a lot of these wrecks people were on before we were, of course. The larger wrecks, divers have been diving those for decades. Of course they have.
That the skeleton wreck was a known wreck. I
Oh
think.
God, yes. A lot of these are. But it's hard to, well, I don't need to really explain it except that they're protected and we can't trust that people aren't going to loot them. So.
Have you ever done anything in St. Louis Bay?
St. Louis Bay.
Yes. Yes, we have.
There is a 9.8 Merc that was brand new in the.
And it has your name on it, right?
It flipped off the back of the boat and was never recovered.
Well, there are a lot of stuff. Well, the tornadoes did a lot of that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's coolers and chairs and
We did
outboard
find-
motors,
we did
and
find a-
there's a toilet in Wayzata Bay. There's a hot water heater in Lafayette Bay.
We did find one boat, a Blue Star Miami, that we think was a victim of the tornado.
Pretty sure it was. That's with this sonar, depending on the depth, an outboard motor doesn't show up or look like an outboard motor, plus it gets buried pretty quickly. I mean, those things do get, you can see them swimming and a little bit of silt and uncover them. But the sonar, you need a sub-bottom profiler for that, and even those don't work so great, because if there's logs that are buried, it's just a bunch of logs covering up other things. But yeah, we know there's motors all over the place. People ask us to go look for stuff, it's like, no, we can't.
Oftentimes, something like a motor, unless it's attached to a boat, that disappears in the bottom pretty.
Yeah, and anchors are everywhere. I mean, we lost our anchor in Carmen Bay. One of our mushroom anchors came loose. So we've got one in the middle of Carmen Bay. That kind of sucked. Well, we were going away from, why are we moving? Oh, crap, And, we have 3 anchors on board, so it's no big deal. I just put in another one, but it was an expensive anchor that ended up on the bottom. But there's stuff everywhere. Like I said, I thought we were going to look at a pontoon, and it was a hot water heater. Lake Pulaski's got a refrigerator. There's a bathtub in Prior Lake. Found that. It's a clawfoot bathtub. There's a cauldron with bottles of beer in it in Lake Pulaski. That had been on the ice. They were obviously had a bonfire and a big cauldron. There's burned wood from a bonfire. And why they left the beer, I don't know. They're still capped. It's a Corona and a Melon Genuine or Bud. Is it a Bud? We didn't take them. They're still there. They're artifactual.
Some sailboat on White Bear Lake had a bad day when we found most of its mast on the bottom there.
With its sail still attached. So there's, and cars, of course. We didn't show you any of the cars, any of the snowmobiles, jet ski. For first generation jet ski.
Not a whole lot of fish houses.
Not, only a couple. None here, none in Lake Minnetonka.
One in Crystal Lake.
Crystal Lake, we got this. He could see those. Those were in better, clearer water than the wrecks, which was really dumb because we didn't care. Fish houses, yay, but wrecks can't see. Fish house in White Bear Lake and fish house in Prior Lake. Got one of those. So anyway, why are we keeping going on about this? There's another handout in the corner. Did you get?
You answered
Okay, I'm
the
sorry.
question the last
Okay,
few
next
minutes.
person. Right there.
Have you gone looking for or found any of the old streetcar boats?
Of course, those have been known for decades. They're north of Big Island. There's 3 of them underwater still.
There were, I think there were like 12 wrecks that the state of Minnesota, back when they did their initial survey in the mid-90s, that they...
That's for the statewide.
Yeah, that was a statewide survey, and they were mainly doing like a literature search and maybe did some field work. But there were only 12 wrecks out of about 110 potential wreck sites that they confirmed existed. 6 of those were in Lake Minnetonka, and they did include the White Bear, the Hopkins, and the Como as in that report. And we did dive on them eventually.
Yeah, we didn't dive on them right away because we know everything about them. We used to operate the Steamboat Minnehaha for the Minnesota Transportation Museum before it exploded or imploded. So we know the Minnehaha up backwards and forwards. I clean the toilet all the time. And I clean the bilge and I crawled all over that boat. So, the Minnehaha, when she was raised, there's not all of them down there. There's only 4 sunk, 3 that are still there. One's been looted. Of course, the Como's propeller was taken off illegally. And that propeller is right now on the Minnehaha. But it was taken off illegally, shouldn't have been done. It could have been done legally if you go through the right channels. But otherwise, there's graffiti on the Hopkins. But there's a small piece of tool. There's a small
There's a couple of
electrical tool in the
a
toilet
couple of electrical tools in the toilet last
of the
time I was
Hopkins.
there.
Someone put a dry suit like it's a ghost. I mean, they're treating the Hopkins wreck like it's an amusement park ride, and I hate it. I hate them anyway. So, no, but anyway, those have been known for a long time. Divers have been diving those for decades, and they now have we gave them their site numbers, and they're protected like everything else. So, and there was one more person over there. Yeah.
So, do you find fishing tackle being attached to this stuff?
Yeah.
Yes. Fishing line is awful.
Going back to Crystal Lake.
Crystal Lake.
There was one target we were diving on that I gave up because I started getting wrapped up in fishing line, and also I guess it might have been a buoy anchor line too, and I didn't have my dive knife with me. And I figured.
If you want to verify, you never found a grand piano or anything like that?
Where'd you drop it? My sonar might actually, give that shape if you tell me where you dropped it. Because there's supposed to be a house down there. There's no house at the bottom of the lake. That's a myth. We'd have found it. But the fishing line is very dangerous. Like I was in one of the wrecks. I was inside a wreck that didn't. The front was busted off. It's in Lake Minnetonka, and I went in there with my arms, and I got all tangled up in fishing line. The guys get it more than I do because they dive more than I do. I'm up the top screaming at people. But the
Play to your strengths.
Hey, he better be glad my voice carries. He was in the hospital. We won't tell him about
Why do you hate fishing tackle?
You want the fishing tackle? We don't bring it up. But no, fishing line we do cut when we come across it. What's really scary is the dugout canoe, the unfinished Dakota dugout canoe, has a lure hanging from it. Still does. We didn't move it. It's still hanging from it. And the amount of fishing line that was around there, I was moving. I got gobs of this stuff because it's near a fishing area. So, but yeah, it's no fun. It can be very dangerous if you're not ready for it. But we were taught in grad school. They blacked out our masks underwater. We did a blind obstacle course in a pool, and we had to go through it blind, and including going through fishing line that was floating. There's a way to do it. You have to swim underneath. You bring it up and swim underneath it. But we had to go through a barrel. We went to the tent was my idea. We went through a tent. So that's part of our Blackwater training in grad school back in the Neolithic times, in the early to mid 90s. 92, 93, 94, 95, something like that.
I just want to know where the big fish.
Well, we've seen some.
Yeah, the All-American had a big one hovering around there.
So north of Big Island, it's a small area. Just go look for fish.
There are, just off of Big Island, there are a couple of piles of debris from the amusement park that were dumped there that
Fish love them.
pretty thick with fish.
There's a couple in Wayzata Bay too that just some people dump some bricks.
Yeah.
Those are fishy. There's north of Big Island, entrance to Browns Bay, where when it gets shallow, there's lots of fish there. In the upper lake, in front of the patrol building, the Maritime County Sheriff's Water Patrol, there's fish there. And if you go to the south end of East Upper Lake, go very south, there's the one channel buoys that you got to go through, otherwise it's just knockered on both sides. South of, kind of southeast of Spray Island, where it gets really shallow, fish city, but it's shallow. It's very shallow. So there's lots of weeds. I don't know if your fish finder can find them, but we did find a soft fish in 50 feet of water that was pretty big on the minnow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, what was that? Okay, what was that?
That was a carp.
It's a carp or something, hanging out on the top of a wreck. It was pretty big, if you want some carp. But we do see, in the footage I gave, I almost gave a couple pictures of fish. Mostly it's just sunnies and crappies. Big fish though in Christmas Lake. Really big. I mean, nice big northerns, I think. I don't know, I can't tell, I don't fish. The northern that bit me survived, so other than that, that's where the fish are. They're all over the place. Not in bad murky water though. So Jennings Bay, no fish. West Arm, parts of it, no fish.
That we could tell anyway.
Yeah, we don't see them all the time, but usually when the water's murky, there's not a whole lot of fish. Or zebra mussels, because they probably can't get enough oxygen to live, so.
So, what's the craziest or your favorite thing you've found while that?
That's two different things, crazy and
Well, you
favorite.
give
So-
both answers.
And does it have to be here?
No.
What's yours?
Well, it was the, in Wayzata Bay, the cabin cruiser that's still on its trailer.
Oops.
And apparently it's dive shop legend. There've been a lot.
They make up so many lies about what happened.
There's, somebody saying that somebody wanted an amphibious boat that just kept the trailer attached. Yeah, there's stories.
They left the plug out. It's very obvious. It was right out from the launch. It wasn't going over the ice, being towed over the ice, because there's no reason for it right there. There's no way to get on the lake right there. They just forgot to put the plug in. At least they got the pickup unhooked before that ended up down there too. Because it went about a mile into the lake and went down a 50-foot hill. It's on a hill like that. And down here it's 50 feet. Up here it's, 20, 30, 50, well, 30, 35 feet. So that's your favorite. For cool wrecks, it's not crazy. Because we're not that exciting. I mean, what we do is pretty boring. I mean, sure we find neat stuff, but we're not, there might be a dead guy in one of the cars out here. There is that, and we told the sheriff, and their ROV keeps breaking, so they haven't gotten a look yet. But that's not our business, that's theirs, but we told them. But I like the wreck called the Dugout. We've got an aluminum Correct Craft. Correct Craft didn't make aluminum boats. They made wood boats until they became ski nautique when they went fiberglass. That's what they're called now. But they had a Navy contract for during the Korean War to make aluminum landing craft for the military, and they had some aluminum left over. And some guy named Doug asked them to build a boat for him, and they did. And he named it Dug Out. Now, does this guy like baseball? Don't know. Why did his boat sink? He was water skiing in the dark, as far as we can tell. He's a dummy, I guess. But it did not sink on purpose, and she is the coolest thing. She's got a wood deck, but an aluminum body, and a name on the back, and we have no effing idea when she's, no, we have an idea when she's saying, we don't know who owned her, which I don't really care who. I just want to know the circumstances of the sinking. That's what I'm more interested in. But the fact we got the whole craft forum going with this on Facebook, gentlemen that built these things in the 1960s, the moment they looked at it, they said, "Oh, that's an aqua skier." I said, "And we have another aqua skier out here too, aqua skier deluxe. It's wood, of course." And this guy said, "I built these things for years. That's an aqua skier." I said, "Well, it is aluminum." "Nope, that's not aluminum. That's a wooden boat." And I said, "Okay, it's not. It's aluminum." So it must have been built when they had extra aluminum.
Yeah, I scraped the hell out of it with my dive knife, and it's not wood.
It's not. The deck is wood. So that's the coolest thing. But craziest thing, I don't know. I mean,
Doodlebug?
the doodlebug's pretty crazy, but something weird. I mean, we don't find things that are that weird. I mean, we don't find tons of dead people or anything. Good, thank you. I dove on the USS Arizona during grad school. That was interesting. I was in one of the turrets, which I didn't want to, we weren't supposed to go into. But floating over the gun that's still there in Hawaii over the USS Arizona, that's probably the coolest thing I've ever done. On scuba, just floating over this big gun from, December 7th. Oh, and I worked on a PBY flying boat. That was our mostly focus during that grad school in 1994. We did a PBY flying boat that was out in Kaneohe Bay. When the Japanese came to attack, they hit Kaneohe first, and this plane was one of the first casualties, and we documented that plane. It's now on the bottom of it's buoy. It's got a buoy with air in it. It's a punching bag underwater now. It still has the air in it from 1941, and you can punch that bag. But working on that plane was probably the coolest, and diving on the Arizona, because not a whole lot of people get to do that, so there's that. Anything else for you?
Herbie?
The shrimp. No? Dances
Well,
with shrimp.
yeah, I got the nickname Dances with Shrimp. When my field school was in in Jacksonville, Florida, in the St. Johns River, we were excavating a Union transport that.
It has worse visibility than Crystal Lake, folks.
Yeah, this is where we did learn to do zero visibility diving, really. A Union transport, a sidewheel steamer with a walking beam engine that was mined and sunk in 1863, and it was never salvaged at all. And we went down there to map out the main deck on that. And 3 seasons we got all the starboard side mapped. But when I was down there working, drawing the aft cargo or the forward cargo hatch, I felt something tug in my dive overalls, and then all of a sudden something spiny starts thrashing around in my chest area. So I grabbed it, crushed it, and made my way to the surface, still holding, zero vis. So I'm, pulling myself along with one-handed on the guidelines up to the line to the surface, while holding my chest because I wasn't sure if I killed it. And got to the surface and asked the guy if he could help me figure out what the hell swam down my shirt. And it was a shrimp.
He killed the poor thing. He smushed it.
Well, you have a shrimp come down your
Bacteria. I mean, he smushed the shrimp. But anyway, you guys were on comm gear because it's so really.
Not that year.
Oh, you weren't. So.
That first year we weren't.
Oh, okay. When did you have Dances with Shrimp then?
That was that year.
Okay, he became Dances with Shrimp because of that. He's now the part of the Shrimp Consortium. If you've been to grad school, we're all idiots. It's beer drinking and stupid things.
Thank you, Hans van Tilburg, for that name.
So anyway, that was for him. I don't know if anything else. It's like I said, it's not that exciting or weird, really. You find some interesting wrecks that we think are so cool, and everyone looks at you and go, "Huh? What's so cool about that?" Well, okay. So we can make something up, but we don't know. We're not that imaginative either. So.
Anyway.
We have very boring lives. We don't go into crowds either. If it's with the pandemic, you guys are the first people we've talked to since the pandemic started. We're doing stuff on Zoom, of course, so my social skills have really gone down the drain. And you're just lucky I didn't have any expletives like you would not believe. I've been watching myself because I haven't been in public much, so forgive me. We're both immunocompromised, so we're kind of nervous about getting COVID. We haven't gotten it. We're the 2 people on the planet almost that haven't gotten it yet. So. And since people are leaving, that's our goal, our saying we're done.
Thank you.